You also met with the president of Iran.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that meeting.
Yeah, I've been doing so many of these interviews about Charlie Kirk. I haven't gotten a chance to write up this meeting, which was at a hotel on the sidelines of the UNGA immediately after Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian met with Emmanuel Macron to discuss the looming and very hypocritical snapback sanctions that France, the UK, and Germany are planning to impose on Iran for supposedly violating an Iranian P5+1 nuclear deal, which the United States shredded in 2018. Um, it's funny how only Iran has to comply with a deal that no one else complies with. And so he was late for the meeting, and I gathered in a hotel lobby passing through airport style security, very militarized setting. And in the lobby, I saw many of the people that we would recognize as sort of the voices and faces of the anti-war movement in the US, including people more on the conservative side who would get branded like isolationists, but it couldn't be more fairly described as like restrainers or realists. There were several analysts there from think tanks and uh, but it was a very good crowd that was of all people who are opposed for various reasons to a U.S. war with Iran. Now, last year I met with Pezeshkian at the UNGA in a similar setting, but the meeting was composed mostly of mainstream media bigwigs, including like Lester Holt, Andrea Mitchell, Robin Wright from the New Yorker, uh, figures from the Washington Post. Iran was speaking to a different audience this time because it recognized that the mainstream media would not had delivered nothing for it, and that it was seeking a voice, a direct channel to the Biden administration then. But now there's no one to talk to in Washington because Donald Trump had potentially set them up for the unprovoked Israeli assault last June, in which their commanding generals, their nuclear scientists, and their civilians were slaughtered in their beds in, again, an unprovoked attack, including by Mossad agents inside the country. And Israel did it with the knowledge that Donald Trump would come in the end and quote unquote finish this round of the conflict by bombing Natanz and Fordo and supposedly wiping out Iran's nuclear facilities and ending its uranium stockpile. Of course, it failed to do that. And now another round is inevitable. And so this meeting was convened under the premise that Iran would be attacked again by Israel with the expectation that the US, under Trump, who Israel controls, will come in and finish the job when Israel gets in trouble, which it will, and it will get into military trouble again. And Ms. Pezeshkian said openly, war is coming back to Iran for sure. And if they assassinate me, there are 5 people ready to stand in my wake and fill my shoes. It was a very grim and disturbing comment. He slammed Steve Witkoff, the negotiator who had been overseeing nuclear talks that Iran's government got involved in the last spring and summer under a deadline or a sort of Damocles declared by Donald Trump but imposed by Israel. And he said that Witkoff would sit there in Doha and make all these positive statements about how much he cared about peace and that he would abide by all of these. He would essentially restore the nuclear deal that had been signed in 2015, and then he would go back to Washington and say the exact opposite, and basically echo the APAC line. He said, "I wish someone had recorded these meetings." He was a complete liar. I mean, he just basically said Witkoff can't be trusted. I asked Pezeshkian directly about a speech that Iran's leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei made on September 23rd, which was last Tuesday, where he slammed negotiations, said that they are a declaration of surrender, that if we negotiate again by the US, we might as well just surrender, and that it would be complete folly. Khamenei warned last time that negotiations would lead to more sanctions and war, but the Iranian government, the reformist government, went into them anyway. And Pezeshkian didn't address my question directly when I asked if the leader's statement is reflective of his position. But you can clearly see that he does not trust the Americans and expects war to come whether he negotiates or not. He's under enormous pressure back home from the principalist elements, those who are regarded in the West as hardliners, and doesn't have a lot of political space, I think, to re-enter negotiations. And so there's a tight window for Israel within which Israel can attack. That's what I get from talking to analysts in the US and Iran that I trust who've been generally right about things. And the window may have been expanded by Israel's insane assault on inside Qatar, a US ally that hosts the largest US military base in the region, to wipe out the negotiating team and end negotiations with Hamas. But it probably will close around December because of congressional midterms and because Israel fears that Iran has begun repairing its multi-layered air defense system and restoring its ballistic missile capacity. In other words, its deterrence. And so Israel is going to just attack again, and we can see the writing on the wall. Marco Rubio was just summoned to Jerusalem by his masters, kissed the wall, wore a kippah alongside reciprocal Israeli US ambassador and Christian Zionist fanatic Mike Huckabee. I wonder what was being discussed there. And now Netanyahu, a wanted war criminal under ICC indictment, flew over most European countries, circumvented Portugal and Spain, and is in New York now. And he's going to be pushing for more war. So what we're witnessing right now, I think, is the beginning of another Israeli push for war with Iran that will necessarily involve the US. And Iran's president was sending the message to the American people through us, the part of the American public that understands the stakes from on the left and the right, that we can't allow this to happen. That was his agenda. And he also spoke about his desire for a more progressive social environment in Iran that provides women and ethnic and religious minorities with more rights. Of course, ethnic and religious minorities in Iran have rights under the constitution, which they don't have in Israel, which actually has no constitution. And I'll be releasing a documentary fairly soon about my interactions with Iranian Jews while I was there. But this was the sort of reformist side of Pezeshkian. He was also speaking about friendly relations with neighbors like Azerbaijan, which was used as a base for Israeli attacks on Iran. Overall, a meeting that didn't contain the most substantial, I mean, from Pezeshkian's standpoint, the comments weren't especially substantial or concrete, but the general tone of the meeting was dire because of the imminence of war.